Tim,
Hey, did you say 12:01? Are you on Central Time?
Central Time. Yeah, y'all don't realize there's a
Uh,
whole different time zone west of Elizabethtown.
oh, okay. Interesting.
It's actually very good because we can watch Conan O'Brien, not Conan O'Brien, but the late night show. It's 10:30 our time. So hey,
Yeah. Yeah, I
thank
haven't watched the evening news, the 11, well, the PM news since I moved back to the East Coast because I was in the Iowa and Wisconsin for like what 19 years. So yeah. Yeah,
you
so
go. Well, come down and visit. Well, again, my name is Mike Muscarella, and I'll be leading the meeting today, and we're calling the meeting to order. Thank you, Michaela, for getting out the materials to us, and we'd like to go ahead and go with the roll call. Michaela, are you going to do the roll call?
Sure. All right, so we have today's stand-in chair, Mike Muscarella. We have Beth Schaefer, Christina Robbins, Cliff, is it Mayseka? Can you pronounce your last name for me again?
Yes, it's pronounced Mayasaka.
Mayaseka. I knew I butchered that, and I am so sorry. I haven't said it for 2 months. We have Tim Gilliard.
Yep.
And then Mason Dyer.
Yes, I'm here.
And I know today LaDonna and Kelly send their regards for being absent as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Michaela. And next, you all have received the meeting minutes in our web-based platform, and I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, Clifford Mayasaka made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Tim Galliard seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? There being no further discussion, all those who approve the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The motion passed. Thank you very much. The minutes have been approved. Next, we've gone through this wonderful process, and we have been led by our wonderful team at CPE. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you, Leslie, and each and every one of you for working on our project. And what we wanted to do was to go through a little bit of a healthcare workforce investment fund debriefing. And what we'd like to do is ask a few questions and give some responses on how we felt we did and things that we can do to make things better. So the first question that I have is, do we think we successfully followed the legislative intent? And then follow up, if yes, how? If not, what should we have done differently to better align? So I'm opening up the floor for discussion about, do we think we successfully followed the legislative intent with HWIF?
And just so you all know too, I'm going to take notes throughout this entire session today, and I can share those back out with the committee to make sure if you think of something before we release the next round, we can add that to the list as well.
So again, how did we do? Did we follow the legislative intent? Yes, Clifford.
Yeah, I'd say that we absolutely did. I mean, the good news is there's a ton of need throughout the state. So, I mean, I think this first year was a lot of low-hanging fruit. I mean, it was tough to not identify worthy causes this year. For what it's worth, I think subsequent years it might get a little tougher, but I think absolutely, yes, we did what we were tasked to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Cliff. Who else would like to weigh in on this?
I would agree that this is Mason Dyer with IQ. I'm sorry, I'm driving, but I would agree that we met the legislative intent, particularly in the awards went to a diverse and wide-ranging number of partners, both institutions and providers. And so I think that was in line with the sponsor and the legislature's intent. So I would agree that we've done that. I will say it'll be interesting later on once these projects are underway to see how what the data tells us kind of in terms of accomplishing the goals. I think we've done what we needed to do, but if it satisfies the goals of the General Assembly down the road when the outcomes are available.
Right. Good information. Thank you, Mason.
I would add that I think, yes, we did meet their intent as the intent was written, because as we were a part of it, we've had our own opinions of, is this fair? Large organization versus small organization, professional grant writers versus, front office staff writing this stuff up, that type of thing. So yeah, the way it was written, yes, I think we did meet that, but there is opportunity for improvement. Yeah.
And I would agree with that qualification.
Mm-hmm.
So my feedback is I think we were successful as well. I had conversations. I have a grant with the Health Resources and Services Administration, and I mentioned this program, what we were doing, and they were really impressed, feeling like it's a very innovative thing that our state is doing. So that's one thing that we have to recognize, that other places in the country aren't doing this. We are being innovative and new with it, and it's a good opportunity to steer it towards things that we definitely want it to become out of it in the long run. So
Thanks, Beth. It's nice getting that input from outside agencies as well. Who else would like to weigh in on this? Well, I would like to say, as Tim had mentioned and everyone has shared, I think one of the things that helped us tremendously was at almost every meeting, actually every meeting, we went through the legislative document. And if we had a question, Michaela or Leslie made sure we could reference that document. And we have that for us to look through and to follow. And she made that front of mind in all that we did. And so that would help keep us on track. And it's like Tim said, we have our own interpretations, but when we go back to the source, it helped keep us on the intent that our legislators wanted us to do. So I'm very, very pleased with that. I want to officially thank Michaela and Leslie for continuing to guide us along that track. CPE did a wonderful job with that. Okay. One of the things we want to ask is how we can improve communication about HWIF. How can we do that for both incentive funded awards and healthcare training scholarship partnership proposal awards? How can we improve communication to get this out throughout the whole Commonwealth?
Mike, this is Tina. I represent the State Behavioral Health Agency and the cabinet for Health and Family Services on this. And, as somebody who works in behavioral health, I was really hoping to see a bit more of behavioral health oriented applications come in, despite the pushes that I and others in my department made to get the information out to folks. And certainly Michaela made herself available to talk to folks when they had questions. I'm just wondering if one of the ways that we might increase the visibility of it is to have some of those that were awarded this year, and it may be premature for this, but at some point to have them do testimonials on the impact so that they hear from their peers. We had one community mental health center, for example, that received, I think, 2 awards. The others didn't apply. And so I really would hope that particular community mental health center that received an award would speak to their peers about this opportunity and its value. So I'm just wondering if that might be viable at some point.
Tina, that's a great idea. What platforms would you see something like that, a testimonial? Would it be a Facebook page post? Would it be a post on the website with CPE? Or would it be during a conference? What would you think would be good for that?
Yeah, that's a great idea or a great thought. We have peer groups where we bring those collective groups together, all the CEOs, for example, of the community mental health centers. And so that's one venue that we have that we would push it out, but that's not the larger public venue. I think it's probably going to need to be a multimodal approach. I mean, social media and press releases or whatever CPE typically uses, perhaps. But then I think all of us have the responsibility to help get it out to those disciplines that maybe are not as well represented in the application pool, if you will. So I think we need to maybe do some targeted outreach to certain disciplines.
I think that's good. I think you're right.
Yeah.
What else are you thinking?
So I was thinking, the Office of Rural Health does a podcast where they interview individuals on like a quarterly basis. And I'm actually part of their steering committee as well. So I was thinking of bringing that up as an idea for something that they could interview some of the rural health centers and get the word out, because that's actually nationally broadcast podcast.
Well, that would be wonderful. Great idea.
That would be one avenue we could explore.
Okay. The other thing that, bringing this up, how do we get the word out? In February on the 10th and the 11th, we have the 2025 Kentucky Student Success Summit. And I think what we are trying to do with HWIF is promote our students. We're trying to pathway our students into these programs and getting them into the communities that are underserved and underrepresented. And so we might have a person who received the grant make a little bit of a 5 or 10 minute presentation on how this is going to help them. It's still too early to see how the results, but they can share how it's going to help the processes that they're working on to improve that. I didn't know if Michaela or if Leslie had any thoughts about having maybe a 10-minute congratulations and then them telling us what it means to them.
Can jump in. I love the idea. First of all, I love all the ideas. So if you see me looking at my other screen, I'm aggressively typing each of them up. I think we can definitely bring it to the team that's planning that conference, see if they have any time in the agenda for us to do a quick little testimony, especially since we're on a campus, maybe just have, I think we're at UK, just have UK present on their award. So we can definitely explore that and let you all know and say that came directly from the committee.
I think the communication effort needs to be more targeted. When I suggested that on Lisa at the UK Healthcare, a lot of people got excited and they're like, oh, I'm going to start writing on that today, only to find out after they referred back to HB 200 that, only 13 or so occupations qualify for this. So I'm thinking maybe I should have just went to those 13 in the first place, rather than all that energy around this, because then it makes, they may fall into that crowd and say, oh, we don't qualify. And they, in fact, do qualify. So, yes, I think it could be more targeted. And that's on us. I mean, I think it's on us, the employers who are, participating, to do that, rather than first I just kind of sent this blast information out. Got a lot of people excited that just couldn't participate.
And I'll jump in there too. That's a really great point, Tim. And one thing we definitely noted that happened with that situation, and that happened to others as well, because if they think about it, there were some of those ineligible proposals and they went all the way through the submission stage and realized they were eligible. One thing we're going to update on our website and in our communication for this second year is always listing out those eligible programs on all communication. Because yes, we might link the statute and say, click here. They're not going to click. And I don't blame them. So all of that to say, Great point. Lesson learned. Definitely gonna fix that for the future.
And I also like when Mike had mentioned the different forms of getting the communication out. When you mentioned conferences, I attended a conference this year where they actually awarded the checks. I mean, you could see light bulbs going off in the room like, oh, this is real, and I definitely will participate next time, as if they didn't think the first time was really gonna, come to fruition. But yeah, when they saw those checks go out, some people were like, I'm going back and getting ready for the next one.
So we did that at the collaboratory this year. So that may be what you're talking about. These were the checks for Healthcare Workforce Investment Fund that were highlighted with, we call them our Bob Barker checks.
Yep.
And I regress, but I'm going to say that we found out that the printer had left out a big bunch of our Bob Barker checks that morning, and we were absolutely freaking out. And Heather made it work that the printer could get some immediately to us. So it was a stressful time, but you're right. They absolutely enjoyed those checks. And a lot of those agencies highlighted those checks with their team on their own Facebook pages and on LinkedIn and things like that. So it gave us a lot of visibility. And I did have several people reach out to me and say, I didn't know about this afterwards when they saw those checks. So I think that was a great marketing strategy to share the word.
Agreed.
One of the things we could leverage is Kentucky Educational TV and see if Renee Shaw would do a piece on that. And I know the other media platforms, they follow KET as well, and they could pick up on that story if we do a press release, but make it coming from KET and, allowing the folks that really watch KET are the folks that are also movers and shakers in wanting to improve the health of the Commonwealth and all the things that we're trying to do. But that will get the message out a little bit, and then we can take that segment and make that a link in a lot of the things that we are sending out on our webpage, Facebook page, and what other social media things we'd like to do. Anything else? Great ideas. I know we're going to wear out Michaela's fingers for typing with all these suggestions. One of the things wanted to ask about the submission forms that we received. How can we improve them? What are ways that we can improve the submission forms? And a quick an idea to think about, should we limit the pages or words? Should we have a word limit and a page limit, or word limit or page limit? What do you all think?
I totally agree. I think that's a good point that came up, and when we were reviewing some of them were 27 pages, others were 7, so yeah, some consistency would be helpful.
And oftentimes on the platform for the application, we could create one that has a box where they would submit their information and have a word count. That's one thing that we certainly could do to help them so they know how many words they've got at that moment. What else? What else can we do to improve the submission form?
I'm just curious, Michaela, did you get feedback from any of the applicants or were there patterns in the kinds of questions you were getting that would help us know where they were having difficulty in the submission or application process?
Great question. So overall, I think, yes, I agree about creating a page limit or a word count limit, just for consistency, because a lot of the questions were, hey, how many details do I need to put? Like, what is too much? What is too little? Because they're so used to the grant style where there is a limit. And in addition to that being a really big concern, one thing I noticed, and I don't have a fix for this yet, so we have a few months to figure this out before the next round, is forcing the two partners in the partnership proposal to do it together. That is what I am finding to be the hardest thing, is one of the entities is doing it and getting the other to sign off. However, that does not mean everyone on each side of the party table is actually aware of what's being agreed upon. You would think, but I've received questions since then of, well, I didn't take part in that, so can you explain more? But they had a signature to it because they wanted to get it through the process in a hurried manner. Do I think there was any ill intent? Absolutely not. It's all going to work out. I think where there was year one, that caused some confusion on should it be the healthcare program or should it be the partner initiating that proposal document when it should be both?
And you want to facilitate collaboration from the moment of the application, because you want to have that same level of collaboration go through the grant process and working the grant. And so I did see that in some of our applications where each person wrote a certain segment, and it was sometimes it didn't collaborate, jive together, as much. It wasn't as seamless. Whereas had they been at the table or on a Zoom or something and worked it out together, it would have been a lot more blended, I think.
And there's a couple of really good examples of people that did it well. And if we decide to want to redact or get permission from those entities to post those as a really strong example, when the time comes, that can be a decision we make later on if we want to ask any specific proposals that were really strong in that collaboration aspect that may help provide guidance, because of course this was the guinea pig year. But I'm glad you all noticed that trend as well. And like I said, I don't think there was any ill intent. I think it was just miscommunication on the expectation there.
Let me ask this question. I know some grants have an introduction phase where they say, okay, we're going to open this grant up, but for anyone that wants to apply for this grant, you must attend this information Zoom or session first to learn more about it and what is expected and what is required. And then if they attend, they can apply. But that way we can get information out to them, and we can have more than just one information session. But that way it allows them to hear from us and CPE what the intent is, and so they don't make the mistake of completing a grant application and realizing they're not eligible.
That's a good idea. I'll definitely write that down too, because one thing, if you all remember, and I don't expect you to remember this from last year, because this was right when you all were being welcomed into this group, we had an intro of what the plan was going to be like in January. And then we had a gap until we got the appropriation. Then June 1, we technically released a pre-submission period prep season leading up to the July 1 through August 15th submission period. So even though that was the intent of that 4 weeks, those interactions didn't happen. It was just over email. I like the idea of being more on a webinar or a Zoom with them, Mike. Does anyone else have any feedback relating to that on how we could really do something to get that information out? I like that idea.
Some grants do a letter of intent.
yeah.
You could have people submit a letter of intent prior to the application period just to get an idea who's working together, if they even would qualify, because that would actually prevent some of the applications from that weren't eligible from even coming in if they had to submit that letter first.
I just wonder if we add too many steps to it, do we then deter some of the smaller, the EMT people who just want $5,000? They're like, I don't know if I want to put all this effort in, in this application process if I have to do these many steps. That's all. I just think we've got to be a little careful of that.
Right. And we want it to be educational for those folks to be able to sit in on that and realize what's needed so that that small shop can meet the intent and feel comfortable, not feeling like they had to ask a lot of questions.
Right.
You make it a less, an hour or less meeting and help them be educated on the best way to do that. And to offer them any assistance, let them know if you have any questions, call this number.
Yep.
Good.
We've done those bidders calls like that before, Mike, when we do funding opportunities for my department. We've made them optional for folks to join. So it doesn't give you a great sense of who plans to apply. And we have tried letters of intent before, and it just became too onerous. And so we took that piece out as well. So, but I like the idea of a bidder's call for those that would like more technical assistance and information about the application process. So
Well, I like to know that it has a name. You just taught me something today.
Oh, yeah.
Kidder's call. Good, good. The other thing I want to ask, our scoring sheet, do we have any recommendations? What are your thoughts about using the scoring sheet? I know we updated it throughout the use, but what are your thoughts on ways we can improve that?
And please know, whatever you say will not offend me. Even though I made the document, I truly want your feedback. So
That was a
pretend I'm
tough
not here.
build. That was a tough build, Michaela. And shame-free zone, everything's good. Can I share just one thing? On the scoring tally, I think we did get down to where it was pre-populated because CPE knew the answer to the question that we were answering to have a score. One of the things I think I would have liked is to see a running total of the score as we input our score for that section. It then gives the total. And then as I do the next one, it adds that in. So we can see where we are as we're moving through the process. That's the only recommendation I had for that. Because I know it was a huge work in progress and it was a heavy lift. And thank you, Michaela, for doing that. Anything else about the scoring sheet? All right. What about the evaluation criteria? Do we have any ways that we can improve the evaluation criteria based on what we've just gone through?
I think we can align the evaluation with the order of the proposal. So, some of the things were, it was like the last question, but yet it correlated with the first evaluation point, versus, and that's how I have to go back versus them going together. And I can say, oh, yes, they answered this. Yes, they answered that type of thing. So yeah, and maybe poke around a little bit.
Tim, that's a good point. Making it more intuitive.
Right.
What else? Clifford?
I thought the issue of size of partners was a bit of a red herring, or maybe it was disproportionately weighed in the scoring, because especially as we went through them all, there were so few grant proposals that were from the small organizations that getting those extra, what was it, 10 points, I believe, basically guaranteed them funding anyway. So if they're going to be guaranteed funding, if they're that small, we don't need to score that piece of it.
How would we know? Or how would we flag the fact that they're small?
Well, that information was given to us in the scoring sheet. So, there was, I believe it was like, if they're less than 50, it was 10 points. If they're more than 50, so if they're going to get the 10 points, just give them the 10 points out of the gate and give them funding.
I would think the only thing is, and this goes to the general scoring issue, and I raised it last time, is that we wound up divvying up the money not according to the highest scores.
Right.
And the lowest scores were those that tended to be under 50 employees, even though they got 50 points more. And so then I was, at the end of that meeting, I was kind of like, well, why did I put all this work into the individual scoring if it's not going to matter, particularly with those extra 50 points. Now, that being said, I agree with EMS needing folks. I also agree that smaller places are not as sophisticated as UK. And so but I don't think those points really took advantage, or I think we kind of changed the process a little bit in our scoring meeting, and I don't know how that's going to create a precedent in the future when word gets out that we actually awarded money and it's actually being used.
Yeah, I keep going back, JP, to that notion of, was there or should there be a threshold score that they have to reach to be considered or not. And we kind of did away with that this time. I think if this gets more competitive going forward, we'd have to really think about that.
Or do we have a small organization allocation
Yeah.
and a large organization allocation? Just split, I don't know if it's 50-50, 60-40, but then you play with your conference.
Yeah.
You're
in
large.
your division. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very good point. You know, the luxury we had with the first round is we had more money than we had.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were able to say, you know, everybody's going to get something at some point, because we evaluated them and scored them, so we knew there was worthy causes moving forward. But it made it difficult the second round when we didn't have all the money to spend for all of the requests, and we had to divvy it up differently. So I think I like having an applicant pool for large organizations and an applicant pool for small organizations. I think that may be beneficial. Anything else?
You know, I was going to say maybe a portion for, like, I don't know, a running total maybe of where we're getting requests and allocations, you know, because presumably, I mean, and again, I'm trying to read into the intent of the legislators, but you know, everybody wants something in their own district, and you know, and we're obviously going to be clustered around the various academic centers because they were frequent partners, but you know, there probably needs to be some more art to it as we move forward, and the available funds are short of the available desires. And I think geography may need to play a more robust part in the evaluation going forward. I'm not quite sure how I would suggest we solve for that, but it is something that I would like to sort of understand, maybe a little better than I do right now.
Got it.
And then I also wonder, should there be a limit on some of the larger organizations? I mean, I can't help but think that 2-point-something million that went to Louisville, not that I'm holding anything against Louisville, how many of these small $5,000 a pop places could we have helped with some of those dollars, you know? So should it be $1 million cutoff for UK and Louisville, you know, and then the rest be allocated to some of these other places? Just a thought.
Right.
And I'm going to jump in here too, Tim. We talked about that before for the last round, but of course we only had kind of 6 months to allocate those funds. I like the idea personally, if we can somehow figure out a scale for the awards or a cap, because even if for some reason we did, let's say here later in the spring, which is the intent to align with awards being able to be distributed for this next coming academic year, if we needed to, if we had excess funds after that award period, people could even potentially, don't quote me on this, resubmit for a round 2, or we do a round 2 again that aligns with January 2026 awards being given to students. So we have now 12 months versus 6 months to work with. And if we decide to do a cap on some larger awards, we can always do multiple rounds again for this next year.
Good point, Michaela. Thank you. Good point.
Just something to think about is that those larger awards just have more workforce impact. So when we give those large awards, it does allow us to put more students into the workforce. So just something to think about.
Right.
That's a good point.
Anything else? Thank you, Leslie. All right. Lastly, I want you all to think about the process that we did for evaluation of all of the organizations that submitted requests. What could we do to improve that process? And remember, we have our platform that the applications were downloaded. We had dates that were scheduled, and then we ourselves had to go through each of those applications, and we did hint toward a word limit, a page limit. That was something that would help expedite the evaluation process. what else can we do? Or do we have anything that we could do to improve the evaluation process?
Is not to question our humble general counsel, but what is open meeting subject? Is it really subject to these grant awards? Um, I, that was just something that caught me off guard when we had our first conversation.
JP, I ask this question every day. So yes, technically we do have to live stream every meeting, even if it is for the award process.
I'm used to like the RFP process, so I was caught off guard, and it kind of made me sometimes made me edit some of my comments based on where I work.
Fair. And I will say too, I think personally, like today's we're doing virtual, which means it is of course live streamed. I know we have some audience members today, which is always good to get the public word out on what we're doing and what our intent is. But I also know that a lot of us love to do in person, which means we still have a public viewing area for anyone that wants to attend. But we're a very chatty group, a very collaborative group. So I think even if we want to move going forward to say, hey, if we are doing a grant evaluation and we're making award notices, let's do it in person. That way we can maybe have a marker board and have more time to like discuss in person. We can always do that instead of doing Zoom as well, and just put out a public notice for an in-person meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Part of the learning process.
And those those in-person meetings, sorry, it's my hospital background crying out, allows us to process in more than one way. And I think, you know, with a Zoom meeting, you process in very limited ways, but when you're together, you can work on, you know, dry erase boards and all types of things that we don't have the luxury of doing with a Zoom meeting. But I think that I like those meetings, especially for when we're determining the awards. Anything else on that? All right.
We touched on this. I'm sorry. I think we touched on this earlier, but when it comes to the actual scoring, the more of the data-based elements that can be pre-populated and consistently applied, I think the better. I think there were some differences in interpretation around program outcomes and workforce demands kind of through the scoring process. And so I think I know it's more work for CPE, but if there was more of that could be done ahead of time and taking the interpretation burden off of the committee, I think it would be helpful.
It makes sense, a good idea, and you know, being able to define what we really want for them to calculate for us to help us, I think that will be advantageous as we move forward and expedites the process. It makes it.
It does. I mean, I don't know about you all, but I took a good 2 solid days to go through that first round of 30 applications or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I will say too, I know the first time we didn't pre-populate it, it will not be a problem moving forward to pre-populate it. I know that went over really well with you all, and that's something we didn't think about the first round. By we, I mean me. So I will also say moving forward, before we reintroduce the submission period, we will need to determine if for some reason we cannot easily update our dashboard that we used this past year. That person that was running that dashboard has left our agency. So hopefully our data team will take on and let us update that in-house. If not, we will probably just sit down and pick our favorite data source, run with it, and then I will still pull that data and pre-populate it for you.
Thanks for that update, Michaela. All right, anything else before I turn the meeting over to Michaela for some more information? Thank you all very much for participating and on this little review and debrief. And Michaela, take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mike, for leading this. I know LaDonna regrets not being here to do it herself today, but I appreciate you last minute jumping in. It's always more beneficial than a talking head of Michaela the entire time presiding to have a committee member leading the committee's work. And so before we close out today, again, wanted to thank you guys for the mass amount of review that you have done over the past 4 months. And I'm going to share a document. I'm going to email it out today to you guys. I don't think I have yet, which I apologize. And if I have, someone just put that in the chat. I've sent a lot of emails. This will give you all an idea, though, of what the impact has been for 2024. And we are currently working with our comms team to put this in a format for our legislative teams whenever we go out. So Leslie or me or Reagan Satterwhite from our office can actually distribute this to any senator or representative when we're talking about HWIF, or if they have to go and testify before them. So I'm going to share this document slowly but surely. All right. So I don't think I've sent this out to you all, but this is basically just a summary of 2024 partnership proposals only. Of course, we had that one incentive fund award. What you will see is we have kept our CPE administrative services team incredibly busy. They are now working on round 2's contracts. Those should all go out in the next couple of weeks. In total, we had 51 submitted applications. So you read 51 applications, and we awarded 46 applications of funding. My favorite, though, that I wanted you all to see today, and I'm not going to read this through the entire document, is your intended student impact just from 2024 is 794 students from now up until 2030. And so some of these will be utilized immediately through our invoice process. So of course, some of those smaller awards, we may get this spring an invoice to say, hey, we're ready to award these scholarship dollars to students. Some are going to be used over the semesters leading up for the next 3 years. However, that means, though, is that first 13 million that we were able to do through the public-private match is going to give 794 students approximately. We know there's going to be some here and there inflation issues, I'm sure, with tuition around that big of an impact for full tuition scholarships. So just know the work is meaningful, and I appreciate it a lot. I think I cried when I typed out that calculation and called Leslie 3 weeks ago. And then, of course, when I send this to you, these are just some good talking points of what the largest awards were, the smallest awards. So you can see there's a great range as we discussed today. Breakdown by institution type. Mason, thank you again for getting the word out to the IQ institutions. It's wonderful to see that they are represented as well. And then, of course, Cliff, whenever you mentioned seeing the visualization of the geographic impact, this is not where the healthcare partners are. That's a map I can make at a later date. This is a map of where the healthcare training programs reside. Since those were the programs that are being awarded funding, this is a geographic distribution in blue of where those programs lie across the state. And we can also make a map for the future to have on hand of where the healthcare partners reside as well. And then we break it down by different healthcare program type. So you're going to see we break it down. I clustered EMS and paramedicine together, different nursing programs, listed out the student impact and the total award amount for each of these different degree types that were eligible. We're going to keep scrolling. And then, of course, just the list where if you want to quickly look at a page, you can look at our last page and see a list of every single healthcare partner that came to the table as well. So I really, really love this document. I think it shows the impact of this work, and I'm excited because we have a lot more opportunities, even though we have less funding for the second year's appropriation. And I just wanted you all to visualize the work that you did this past year. So I will email this out today.
And I would add to that, in the name of sharing for next time's opportunity, if you all want to share that out, feel free to. I know, JP, that might be a brag point on some of your members. So feel free to share that document out.
Well, Leslie, that is exactly what I was going to ask. Thank you for allowing us to do that. And I know that the area health education centers for Kentucky are going to have a legislative day where they're going to meet with legislators just to share about what AHAC's doing. But this document is a wonderful supplement to say, we have so many things that we're interfacing with that the CPE is just focusing on that it will benefit the Commonwealth in so many ways. You know, I think of all those 700 plus lives that will be changed and the economic development power that they will have in our state to take care of the people that they're charged with seeing and improving the health outcomes of Kentucky. So this is marvelous. Thank you for getting that document together.
And Leslie, as happenstance would have it, I just put out the workforce newsletter for us yesterday, but I used an article from November that was put out. So our spring edition, I'll include this one. That's when we're gearing back up again.
All right.
And then- Sorry,
Okay.
Mike, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just following the agenda.
So I will jump in really quick then before Mike closes us out. Just as a general consensus, do you all care to go ahead and plan to meet again in February for a longer period of the 2 hours so we can get a game plan for the actual, like, taking these considerations? I will come with you all draft updates of everything and we can meet for a couple hours at the end of February. That way we can just go ahead and plan for the release of this next round. Would you all have days of the week that you prefer? Should I go back to that original kind of schedule that we were on? I think it was Wednesdays from 1 to 3. Does that normally work for you all? Or, and you all can email me this too. I just didn't know if there was a general consensus by smiles or frowns if we liked a certain day of the week better than others.
I think the original information that we gave you probably didn't change much into this year. So I would go with that, and then we can see how it works out. If there are any big conflicts, we'll just need to let Michaela know.
Sure, and I will check with LaDonna too. I know Wednesdays are hard for her. And so what I'll probably do is call her later today or tomorrow, kind of run down how the meeting went today with her, check on her availability as our chair for this committee, and then I can get an email out to you all in the next couple of days.
Great. Next steps, Michaela, that's the next step that we're looking at, our next meeting. Also, I want to put a bug in your ear for this group that the National AHAC Association will have its annual conference in Lexington, Kentucky, I believe in June. And we have an opportunity. I would love to see us present this to let them know what we're doing as a state to improve the impact of healthcare and education for our students. So this is what that information sheet that you had is a perfect primer for us to use for a presentation.
I'm sorry, who did you say is coming to Lexington? And
The National Area Health Education Center, AHAC. And of
okay.
course,
Oh, yes.
you know, Jim Ballard, Dr. Jim Ballard.
Yes. Okay.
So we lobbied hard for that to come to Kentucky. So, and we're working on speakers and presentations right now. Excellent. Well, any further business before we entertain a motion to adjourn? All right, no further business. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Tim has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tina. She is our second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, please, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand.